Hey, what is up guys, you got Gypsy and I'm back here today with another Borderlands 3 build video. Today I'll be sharing my Great One Flak build, which draws inspiration from the Lovecraftian horror themes of the recent DLC, which are also seen in other games such as Bloodborne. This build cleans through all endgame content, soloing MAYHEM 4 True Takedown and melting through Slaughter, all the while not pigeonholing you into only a handful of guns to use. Later on in the video, I'll be showing a flawless MAYHEM 4 True Takedown Wotan kill, so stick around for that. With MAYHEM 2.0 around the corner, a strong and reliable build will be essential for those wanting to overcome the challenges at these higher MAYHEM levels, and this Flak build is exactly that. In the past, Gamma builds have provided great utility through aggro control with the Red Fang class mod, but they've typically struggled to keep up with the DPS that other rack build and fadeaway builds tend to have, and this is mainly because of the way the Gamma Burst uptime doesn't synergize with the on-action skill and anointed effects, which are a big source of Flak's DPS in a lot of his builds. This is a mechanic that the Gamma focused builds can't really abuse, whereas racks and fadeaway abuse really nicely. With the addition of the Pearl and the old God Shield, Gamma Flak is able to tap into DPS that he never had available in the past. Before we jump into the gear, I want to quickly dive deep into the Pearl and talk about the synergies that it has with different weapons. The Pearl gives us a compounding damage increase of 1% for each successful hit, up to a cap of 15 times, at which point you get an additional 90% damage increase. Many different sources of gun damage are able to actually proc this effect, like gun damage, dot damage, pet damage, action skill damage, and more. This is pretty amazing for Gamma Flak, as we're able to upkeep this huge damage boost very easily in combat. Before we jump into the gear, I want to talk about anointments for the different pieces of the different weapons and gear you're going to be looking at for this build. The main two you're going to be looking at on your weapons are going to be the 110% radiation bonus damage while in Gamma Burst, as well as the consecutive hits anointment, which actually stacks with the Pearl's consecutive hit effect. These are interchangeable, so say you're after a weapon that you really want to use in Gamma Flak and you can't find it with the Gamma Burst anointment, the consecutive hit anointment will help you a lot there. It's going to provide you with a lot of damage and is a nice alternative to Gamma focused weapons if you can't get them to drop. Jumping into the gear choice now, and like I mentioned earlier, there is a huge variety in the weapon options here. Essentially all weapons are viable now in this build, so you won't be limited solely to meta picks, maybe a border over maybe you can't obtain. But first up we have the Brainstorm, and this is a monster when it comes to mobbing. It has amazing synergy with the Pearl, and in my experience is the best weapon for stacking up the consecutive Pearl damage bonus the fastest. This is because its tendrils that spread to enemies will stack up these bonuses of the artifact really quickly, and this tends to melt mobs extremely fast in MAYHEM 4, especially useful in the Takedown. If you're playing True Takedown by yourself, this is definitely a weapon you're going to want to have. The cash-infused Brainstormer as well is a prefix of this particular gun that is going to have a higher mag size with less damage overall, but you're going to be able to get more shots out of it. If you can find on your Pearl, I would recommend finding one with additional mag size. This makes a big difference to a lot of your weapons. It's going to give you more DPS essentially, allowing you to reload less, and it is particularly nice on the redundant Brainstormer, which does have high DPS but suffers that increased ammo consumption. So if you can couple your Brainstormer with a Pearl that has that mag size bonus, you sort of offset the negative of using the redundant Brainstormer. But for sure you could find a cash infused and have similar success. Consecutive hits also works fantastic on the Brainstormer, as does the Lifesteal anointment, which I actually have on this build, and I would recommend if you are struggling with certain content in the game to give the Lifesteal anointment a go. This will you can always fake burst and then use the Lifesteal anointment of this particular weapon to get a ton of health back. But honestly, on this particular build you won't need sustain. Like you have the pet aggro pool of Red Fang. You've got a lot of sustain options on it already, but just as a tip for those who are maybe struggling with certain bosses, certain raid bosses like Wotan, the Lifesteal is a great anointed option there as well. Next up is a weapon that I've recently discovered. I had it drop in the Slaughter and I've been really enjoying it. It's actually really effective in the Takedown, and that is the Star Helix, but it's the Cryo variant with the Gamma Burst Anoint. Now this gun shreds. This shreds all those annoying dogs in the takedown, those armored hounds that really have a way of just jumping on you. It's really, really nice for Wotan's upper half, and I'll be showing some footage of me using that later on in this video. And it's really great for those death spheres which happen to fly around and are really difficult to target at times. The Star Helix bullet pattern will pretty much ensure that you hit those big spheres. And the really nice thing about the Star Helix, the way it synergizes with the Pearl, is its bullet pattern is going to proc the Pearl's effect very quickly. So it's easy to stack up. It's easy to stack up these consecutive hits, which is a bit of a theme in this build. And is every time those bullets hit an enemy, they're proccing that consecutive stacking. And these bullets are going to be carrying not only cryo, but that radiation bonus, which is going to apply the dot tick over time. So other really fun weapons to use on this build are the Soul Render. This is one I've been farming for quite a while now, and I did manage to get a Gamma Burst one dropped. Another really good option in terms of anointed effects on this gun, like I mentioned earlier, is the consecutive hits anoint, which is also fantastic and stacks with the Pearl. But the Soul Render is a ton of fun to use. The Garcia is an amazing gun to use. Lots of fun, really fantastic at mobbing, great for bossing as well. You're going to find that you've got a lot of flexibility when it comes to these weapons. So I'm going to showcase a few more weapons here. We've got the Maggie, which is always going to be really nice on Flak. It was a mainstay in my original GammaVore God Flak build. The redistributors, these are fantastic for mobbing. You're going to find them really effective in the takedown as well. This cryo radiation combo that I mentioned earlier on the Star Helix up here is really nice for the takedown in particular, where you've got a lot of those shielded enemies that don't appreciate radiation, and you've got a lot of those armored targets like those dogs, the hounds, and the death spheres, which will get shredded by the cryo component of this particular combo of elements. The Iridian is fantastic. This is really interesting. It's a new SMG that was added in the recent DLC. It doesn't get a ton of love initially. I think people are a bit underwhelmed by it, but I've had great success with this thing. It stacks up the consecutive bonus of the Pearl very fast, and it has an elemental changing bonus every time you reload. So really interesting gun. The hyper focus here, amazing for mobbing, amazing for bossing as well. It's kind of like an SMG version of the conference call for those of you guys who haven't used it yet. Its bullets ricochet out when you hit an enemy, and it does a fantastic job in most situations. It was buffed a lot in the past, and it's pretty fantastic now. Other really nice options are Dahl. I love Dahl ARs, as you can see, with the Star Helix and the Soul Render. The Dahl is the Chaos here is really, really nice for mobbing. That Gamma Burst bonus with the fire damage is going to be really useful. Will shred mobs very quickly, and its special effect is really nice. Cutsmans are fantastic. Not really necessary, but they are nice. Corrosive Cutsman will help you versus Wotan, but I have a different Wotan Slayer that I tend to use on this build. These Flat Elf guns, the Shredder Fire and the Boom Sickle, are fantastic as well. Also really nice mobbing tools for Flak. The Serial Killer, now this one's interesting. This was added with the DLC, and it is really, really nice. It's got a large capacity to use. It doesn't break very quickly like some Cov weapons do, and the Gamma bonus combined with the Pearl stacking can turn this really into a monster. The Serial Killer can stack sort of like an anarchy effect almost. When you kill an enemy, you get kind of like blood lost on the gun, and you are going to see a big damage increase, which compounds with adds up with the Pearl bonus there, as well as your Gamma bonus. So really underrated weapon and a really nice AR to use. I've mentioned the Soul Render is fantastic. The Ogre is not a gun that's typically seen on Flak, but is a pretty fun option. I happen to really like this gun, and I think that it can work really nicely on this build. You've got a large mag size that is boosted by the mag size component of the Pearl, and because you can spam this gun really fast, you're going to see the Pearl's stacking effects really bear fruit on this weapon, especially when Gamma Burst is up. Clairvoyance is a really nice option too. This shreds pretty much everything. It's fantastic. The Masher variant isn't required. You can use just the standard single shot variant, but I found the Masher to be pretty nice myself. That cryo and radiation combo is just fantastic in most situations in the game. The Anarchies. Now these two are insane. The Anarchy is a new gun that was added in the DLC and is probably the most broken gun in the game at the moment. It's absolutely insane. I gotta be honest, I don't use it that much because I find it very trivializing of the combat, but it is a lot of fun to use when you want, and it will just delete everything off the map. So that's a fantastic option there. Lifesteal is really nice too because you're deleting everything even without a damage boosting anoint, thanks to the pearl and thanks to the inherent way the Anarchy works. So having that lifesteal on it is useful as well. Recursions are going to be also a really fantastic weapon to use inside the takedown, inside most mobbing situations. Again, I don't tend to use them that much. They tend to be quite trivializing of the game, but it is definitely a weapon that you should use if you are having trouble in mobbing or bossing situations. The Insider is a really interesting gun and something I have to do more testing on. I think that it has a ton of potential with Mo's, especially with this consecutive hits particular anoint that I have, but the Gamma Insider is an interesting choice and something that shouldn't be slapped on. It's really strong, and if you can find it with the right anoints and the right elements, it's gonna have a lot of nice potential in mobbing. Now the conference call, this is what I use to take down Wotan and what I will show off later in the video. The conference call is actually amazing in this game. It received a bit of hate when it came out. It was pretty underwhelming compared to its former glory in Borderlands 2, but it certainly is no slouch, and the bullet pattern of the conference call is going to be fantastic for proccing the Pearl's anointed effect, or the Pearl's stacking bonus I should say. All those extra ricochet, all those bullets that the conference call produces are going to stack up your Pearl's damage increase, so this can delete armored targets very quickly. If you get like a shock or a fire variant, you're going to find it really useful in just mobbing for flesh targets as well. Lobs are amazing. Lobs have been buffed, as you all know, and they are now amazing. Really great boss kills. Really great to use if you're farming. I use this fire lob when I'm farming the bosses in the Heart's Desire for nice loot. So that's a really nice quick farming tool there, the lob. It recently was patched, so it doesn't fire as many rounds, only fires one, but it can be spammed a lot quicker, so that's really nice. It also synergizes better with overkill now, so lobs are also a great choice here. Lumps are really useful for mobbing situations like the bridge in the takedown. I find that really useful there for using the lumps, as well as the slaughter shaft. You're going to find the lumps do help out a lot there in those dense mobbing situations. Now with this build, like I mentioned, you have such a variety with the choice of weapons you can use that if you want to play long range too, you've got some fantastic options and snipers. You've got the Headsplosion, which I don't have on me at the moment, but that's a great option. The Wedding Invitation as well, which is capped at level 53 unfortunately. But the new snipers from the DLC, the Skullmasher, the Cocky Bastard, and the Unseen Threat are fantastic options here, and do appreciate the Gamma Burst anointment on them for this build. Though they aren't necessary at all. They have such high damage that you don't even need an anointment on them, but you will notice a big damage increase if you do get the right anoints. The Krakatoa, one of my favorite snipers, favorite guns in the game actually. If you've seen my recent Mo's build that I put out, my Supernova Mo's build, it performs amazing on Mo's, and it's no different on Flak. It's absolutely incredible on Flak. The fast fire rate on this gun is going to stack up the Pearl's bonus very quickly too. Not that this insane gun needs any further damage increase, because with Gamma Burst, with radiation plus fire, and it's insane base damage and dot damage, you don't really need a damage increase, but you get it with the Pearl. So yeah, it turns this thing into a monster. Now shields, let's talk about shields. So for most content in the game, I recommend using the Old God. This is a ton of fun to use. It's a new shield that was introduced in the DLC and does fit the theme of this build, this Great One Flak build. The Great Ones were the gods, the old gods in Bloodborne, for those of you guys who may be unaware of that. So I think it does suit the build very nicely, and it will give us an increase to our radiation damage because this particular old god does have that slight radiation resistance there. So we get a nice 20% increase to our radiation damage, which we're going to be applying all the time when Gamma Burst is up. Gamma Burst is going to be up most of the time anyway, so we're going to be getting that increased radiation damage from the shield, which is useful, as well as increased elemental damage resistance as well, which is nice there. We also drop booster shields, which is one of the rolls that this shield came with, but the main reason you're using this shield is for the solid shield stats overall and the increased elemental damage on the shield. This rolled cryo bonus damage on ASE, which is nice, but again, we're not really trying to abuse on action skill and anointed effects on this particular build, but you can fake burst and take advantage of that cryo damage if you really need to. Alternatives to the old god I would mention here are the stopgap. The stopgap are fantastic. This is my go-to shield when I'm not using the old god on flak, and I think that it can be really helpful in the takedown as well. If you're getting overwhelmed with Wotan in the Wotan fight, if you're getting overwhelmed with attacks, you can switch up to the stopgap and you'll find that you have a little bit more breathing room with that 5-second invulnerability window. But because we do have the pet pulling aggro with Red Fang, you can afford to wear a more offensive shield, and the old god is a nice balance between offense and defense. It's got great defensive stats whilst offering a pretty solid offensive component with the bonus elemental damage. Speaking of class mods, we are using a Red Fang, and I'm still using my level 51 honestly because these rolls are fantastic for the build that I use. But mainly you're going to be wanting to look for any Red Fang with the particular rolls that you want. The skills that it comes with aren't that great, to be honest. They aren't that essential. I've got Eager to Impress, 2 into Eager to Impress. I would like as many into Eager Impress as I could really, and maybe one into He Bites for that bonus, so I don't have to invest in that point. But the skills here aren't that important. It's the roles that you're going to be wanting to look for with this class mod, which is kind of strange. Usually you're wanting to look for certain skills, but you're using the Red Fang class mod for the effect that it gives you, allowing your pet to taunt enemies, and it's a real game changer in the end game content, with your enemies focusing on your pet, allowing you to deal as much damage as you want from any distance, whether you want to be close up or further back. The Red Fang is incredible, and I think this is going to be one of the fundamental tools that Flak has in these higher mayhem levels, deterring aggro. We don't know how hard the game's going to get, and if it does get to OP 10 levels of difficulty, having aggro deterrence with an invincible pet it's insane. I don't think a lot of people realize that yet, but that's massive, and the Red Fang is key in that. This particular role has shotgun and Hyperion weapon critical and dart weapon critical, which does factor in really nicely to the Brainstormer, so it just allows the Brainstormer to become that much stronger. And the dart critical is really nice when I'm using the Star Helix in particular in the raids. So onto the grenades, I would recommend using the Hunter Seeker. That is because the Hunter Seeker will proc MAYHEM, it'll proc head count, it'll proc leave no trace, which are all nice in themselves. It's all really nice to proc those skills to give you some cooldown, to give you some ammo regen back. But the main reason we're using this is to upkeep the Pearl's stacking bonus. You throw out a couple of these, its bullets are going to proc the consecutive hit mechanic in the Pearl, which is really important for upkeeping your damage. It's also going to give us that nice on grenade throw weapon bonus, but that anointment isn't required. If you can find a Hunter Seeker with any like an ASE effect on it, I would recommend using that. It's more so using the grenade for its utility on this build over needing a particular anoint on it. The anoint is just icing on the cake, but we're using it to upkeep the Pearl's damage bonus, and that is really its essential purpose. You could also use a recurring hex if you've got one of those. You can spam hexes, which will also upkeep the Pearl's damage bonus really nicely. So that is the gear choice. Like I said, there's a ton of different guns you can use. You're really not limited at all. These aren't required for the build. These are just what I'm enjoying using at the moment. If you really want to just delete everything off the map and you just want to one-shot everything, then by all means use the Anarchies. Perhaps these will be necessary as the game gets more difficult with MAYHEM 2.0, but at the moment I think they're a bit overkill, but they are fun to throw on every now and then and just have some fun. Though I do really like the gunplay of weapons like these. The Garcia is a ton of fun to use with Gamma Burst, and I would recommend using that. It's easier to come across in the Stagecoach as well, which is a really sought out weapon on Flak. So if you can't find a Stagecoach, a Garcia is a really, really fun option and really effective option to use. Now we're going to jump into the skills here. Now this skill tree very, very closely mimics my GammaVore God Flak build that I uploaded on the channel a few months ago. But now with the level 57 increase, we are able to invest into Furious Attack, which is going to give us a nice 20% gun damage increase at full stacks, which is actually boosted up by 30% from big game. So that is a really nice damage increase of flak. Instead of investing points into keeping our pet healthy, like I would have done in my previous upload, in my previous GammaVore God Flak build, this build focuses instead on drawing damage from flak towards your pet, using Hive Mind, using Shared Spirit, and these are key skills in the Takedown where if you get overwhelmed, you're going to be diluting some of that damage you're taking over to your pet. And the reason we don't care about that, the reason I've only got 1 point into Who Rescued Who, is because with Gamma Burst up, your pet is invincible. Your pet never dies no matter how much damage it takes. And using weapons like the Brainstormer, using weapons that proc critical hits very easily, like the Brainstormer with MAYHEM, if you're a good aim, just any dull weapon, a shotgun like the Garcia, you're going to be getting your cooldown for Gamma Burst restored very quickly thanks to head count here. So there is going to be very little downtime in your pet being in Gamma Burst. If it happens to go down outside of Gamma Burst, well, you just fire one shot of the Brainstormer essentially into a crowded group of enemies, and you have your Gamma Burst back up, ready to activate, ready to make the most of your kind of damage deterring skills like Hive Mind and Shared Spirit. Now, while the rest of the build is fairly similar to what I uploaded previously on that, we are maxing out Barbaric Yop and maxing out Pack Tactics and moving 5 points into Furious Attack like I mentioned. Over here in the Hunter tree, this is a pretty standard Hunter tree approach, speccing down into MAYHEM. For the Takedown, I do recommend using 5 out of 5 into Hunter's Eye. If you want faster reloads, if you want to tweak the reload speed a bit and you want to get slightly faster reloads, you can max out Second Intention and put less into Hunter's Eye. It's really not essential here, it's just extra damage really. But you could make the argument that being able to reload a bit quicker is also sort of more DPS, but I found the weapons to have a pretty solid reload time anyway, so I haven't really needed to max this out, but it's certainly an option there. Two Fang is a great skill. I used it a lot of my Splash King Flak build. If you guys haven't seen that, go check that one out. But on this build, we aren't going to be really focusing on using weapons like the Protuberance, so Two Fang isn't required. Though if you do want to, like I said, because there's so much weapon variety, if you want to switch in something like the Protuberance, if you want to use something like the Lumps a lot, then I would recommend specking into Two Fang. It is a great option here. Now, when you don't really need to utilize Red Fang, say you're in a situation where you're not really that worried about getting overrun by enemies, you can switch up and use something like a Cosmic Stalker. This is really fun when mobbing. This is a great mobbing option and is something that I like to throw on every now and then when I just want to use my ARs. Say I just want to run around with the Star Helix or the Soul Render, I switch on the Cosmic Stalker, which is going to give us a nice DPS increase, and we don't have to worry really about our pet deterring aggro, because this build has great survivability, great bulk, even without the Red Fang bonus. But the Red Fang is certainly the superior consistent class mod, so definitely feel free to mix up the class mods. Cosmic Stalker is a great option, Deadeye is a great option if you want to use Protuberances and stuff like the Lumps. You can get 10 out of 5 in Two Fang, so there's definitely a bit of room for tweaking in the class mod choices and skill choices, but this is what I'd recommend for the hardest content in the game so far. So in terms of pets, I want to quickly cover the Great Horn Skag versus the Spider Ant Scorcher debate here. Now, both are fantastic. Both are really good. We've maxed out Barbaric Yop, so we're going to be getting nice bonuses from either, depending on what you want. One upside I will say with the Scorcher is obviously you're getting that nice 3% health regen, which is pretty nice, to be honest. But one of the upsides the Scorcher has over the Skag for keeping the Pearl's damage stacking up is that its ranged attack is more likely to impact enemies and cause a damage tick over time, whereas your Great Horn Skag actually has to connect with an enemy and doesn't have elemental bonus attached to it. So that is something to consider. Your Spider Ant Scorcher may be able to keep up the Pearl's effect in longer, but you shouldn't be relying on your pet to keep it up. It's just a bonus, if that makes sense. I found the Skag to give a bit more damage overall than the Scorcher, but the Scorcher is a fantastic option if you want a little bit more health regen, if you want a bit more bulk. It's certainly a viable option, and that 30% elemental bonus is going to be really nice for elemental focused weapons like the Lobs. If you're using the Lobs, the Skag does actually out damage even with elemental weapons, which is interesting from my testing. But if you're using elemental focused weapons like the lobs, like the insider, like the lumps, like the recursion, you will find that you get that nice, or like the brainstormer as well, I suppose. You'll find that you get that nice damage bonus increase from the Scorcher. You won't miss the Skag all that much. But for general mobbing, for general bossing, I do tend to run with the Skag. He's more consistent overall across the board in terms of damage increase, and I find that to be the most effective for me. But mix and match depending on what you prefer. That is going to be the build. That is going to be the spec. I hope you guys did enjoy this breakdown, and yeah, I'm going to show some gameplay, show you guys how this build works in action, and I hope you guys do enjoy.
Giant bastard up!
Death! Do you see me? You are brave. This is the way. My boy, it's down! Did I save your life?